When I learned my parents handed the business to my sister, I quit the 80-hour unpaid grind. Dad said, "Paula's better with people." A week later, he called panicking. They'd lost their biggest client. "Let your heir fix it," I told him. A month later, 3 contracts were gone, and they begged me back. I only said, "Funny how that works." The pen moved with a familiar, practiced flourish. I watched, frozen in the corner of my father's opulent office, as he signed his name on the document that would seal my fate. The heavy signet ring on his finger, the one bearing the Matthews Commercial Construction logo, glinted under the warm, expensive lighting. My mother stood beside his leather chair, her hand resting proprietorially on my sister Paula's shoulder. The pride in her eyes was a physical force, a stark contrast to the cold disbelief settling in my own chest. Richard, our family attorney, gave a professional, satisfied nod. "That's it then," Dad said, his voice booming with finality as he slid the papers across the polished mahogany table. "Official as of today." For 12 years, my life had been this company. I'd started at 20, sweating on summer breaks as a laborer, learning the feel of raw materials and the rhythm of a construction site. While Paula was in New York, building a social circle and a career in marketing that she treated as a hobby, I was in college studying engineering, then in the office, mastering estimating, project management, and the unglamorous, vital art of operations. I became operations manager not through nepotism, but by knowing every bolt, every beam, and every line item of every budget. I had bled for Matthews Construction, sacrificing relationships, personal time, and my youth on the altar of a future I believed was mine. "Mark." My father's voice cut through the roaring in my ears. "Did you hear what I said?" I blinked, forcing my gaze to focus on the 3 of them. "Sorry, what?" "This doesn't change your position with the company," he said, his tone the same one he used to placate a nervous junior client. Reassuring. Dismissive. "You'll still be operations manager. Paula will be taking over as CO when I retire next year, but your role is secure." Paula offered me a smile I knew well, a carefully curated blend of sympathy and triumph. At 32, 2 years my junior, she carried herself with the unshakable confidence of someone who had never been told no. She had just been handed the keys to the kingdom. "Mark," she said, her voice soft with practiced compassion, "I hope you know how much I value your expertise. I couldn't do this without you." I stared, wondering if she actually believed the words. She had been with the company for 10 months. 10 months versus my 12 years. The question was out before I could stop it, raw and stripped of its usual professional veneer. "Why?" The room went silent. Richard suddenly found the contents of his briefcase fascinating. My mother's smile tightened into a thin line. Dad cleared his throat. "Mark, we've discussed this. Paula has the vision for where the company needs to go. She's better with people. The clients love her. You're brilliant with operations, with the technical side, but I'm not so material," I finished for him, the words tasting like ash. "That's not what I'm saying," he replied, but his eyes, those hazel eyes we all shared, shifted away from mine, betraying him. My mother stepped forward, the peacemaker. "Darling, you're a crucial part of the company. You can still help from behind the scenes. Paula will need your support." Behind the scenes. The phrase was a physical blow, knocking the air from my lungs. That's where I'd always been, wasn't it? The silent engine in the dark, making the machine run while others stood in the spotlight and took the bows. Paula stood and approached me, taking my hands in hers. Her grip was firm, assured. "Mark, this partnership will be amazing. You know the operations inside and out, and I can bring in the big clients. We'll be unstoppable together." I looked into her eyes and saw nothing but serene self-assurance. She genuinely believed she deserved this. She believed the narrative our parents had crafted, that her charm was a more valuable currency than my competence. "Congratulations," I said finally, extracting my hands from her warm, confident grasp. "If you'll excuse me, I have work to finish." I turned and walked out, ignoring my mother's call of my name. The familiar hallway, lined with photographs of completed projects and important handshakes, felt alien. I scanned the images as I walked. My father in all of them, Paula in a few recent additions. I searched, my heart sinking further with each step, but couldn't find a single photograph of me. Behind the scenes, indeed. That night, I sat on my balcony with a bottle of whiskey and my laptop, the city lights of downtown blinking below like a field of fallen stars. In the distance, I could make out the silhouette of the Harrington Tower, my crowning achievement. I'd stayed up for 72 hours straight to finalize that bid, developing the innovative modular construction approach that won us the contract over firms twice our size. My father had been the face of the presentation, but the substance, the genius, had been all me. My phone buzzed. "Paula? Hey bro, I know today was a shock. Let's grab lunch tomorrow and talk through the transition. I value your input more than anyone's." I took a long swig of whiskey, The burn, a welcome distraction from the deeper ache, and didn't reply. Another email pinged on my laptop, another crisis with the West Side development that needed my immediate attention. It always did. I had worked 80-hour weeks for years. I'd spent Christmases on job sites, had vacations in Cancun interrupted by emergency calls about concrete pours, had watched relationships wither because I was never truly present. All of it, every sacrificed moment, was predicated on a promise that had never been spoken but had felt as solid as the foundations we poured, that all this would be mine someday. I was a fool. I closed my laptop with a definitive snap. The decision crystallized in the cool night air, cold and clear. If my sacrifice was worth so little, if my legacy was to be a supporting role in someone else's story, then it was time to reconsider my commitment. No more 80-hour weeks. No more midnight emergencies. No more sacrificing my life for a company that would never be mine. From now on, I would work my designated hours, take my weekends, use my vacation days. And most importantly, I would start looking for a way out. The thought should have terrified me. Instead, it felt like my first full breath in 12 years. The experiment began the next morning. I arrived at 8 a.m. sharp, 2 hours later than my usual dawn patrol. The ripple of surprise through the office was palpable. "Everything okay, Mark?" asked Nancy, our receptionist for 20 years. "Never better," I replied with a genuine smile. "Beautiful morning, isn't it?" My office was a hive of panicked messages, voicemails, urgent emails, project managers hovering. I handled them with cool, detached efficiency. No more hand-holding, no more absorbing their problems as my own. By noon, I was current. Paula appeared in my doorway. "Ready for lunch?" "Can't today," I said, not looking up from my screen. "I've got plans." "Oh, I thought we were going to discuss the transition." "Nothing to discuss. You're the heir. I'm operations. Business as usual." I could feel her staring at me. "Don't be like this, Mark." Her voice had taken on that cajoling little sister tone that had always worked on our parents. I finally met her gaze. "Like what?" "I'm doing my job, Paula. Exactly my job. Nothing more, nothing less." She frowned. "Dad mentioned you haven't returned his calls about the Westridge bid. You were supposed to review the final numbers." "I wasn't scheduled for it. If it's urgent, I can look at it next week." "The bid is due Friday." "Then someone should have scheduled it with adequate time for review," I said, returning my attention to the computer. "I'm sure you can handle it, though. You're better with clients, after all." The silence that followed was thick with her frustration. "Fine. I'll tell Dad you're unavailable." "You do that." The Westridge bid went out without my review. We lost it by a narrow margin due to a materials estimation error I would have caught in 5 minutes. My father called me into his office, his face flushed with anger. "What the hell is going on with you? We lost Westridge because of a rookie mistake." "That's unfortunate," I said calmly. "Unfortunate? Mark, this was our ticket into the healthcare sector. Paula needed your expertise on this. And if someone had scheduled time for me to review it properly, I would have provided that expertise. During business hours." His eyes narrowed. "What's that supposed to mean?" "It means I'm no longer available 24/7. I work from 8 to 5, Monday through Friday. I take lunch breaks. I go home on time." I leaned forward slightly. "Since you made it clear that my 12 years of sacrifice meant nothing in terms of succession. Is that what this is about? You're punishing the company because you're upset about Paula?" "I'm not punishing anyone. I'm adjusting my work-life balance to reflect my actual position here. An operations manager with no stake in its future. I need you, Mark. The company needs you. And I'm here, during business hours, doing exactly what my job description entails." He stared at me, a stranger looking out from my father's familiar face. "I've got a meeting with the Harrington Group on Thursday. Their CFO specifically asked for you. I can make 10 to 11 a.m. work. The meeting's at 9 o'clock. Then I'll be there for the second half." I stood. "Is there anything else?" The Harrington meeting was a disaster that I salvaged in the second act. I arrived at 10 a.m. to find my father floundering and Paula looking utterly lost. Thomas Harrington's face lit up when I entered. Mark. Just the man we need." For the next hour, I was in my element, diving into technical specifics, offering elegant solutions, reminding them why they'd chosen us for the tower. Afterward, Thomas pulled me aside. "Your father mentioned Paula will be taking over as so," he said, his eyes shrewd. "Interesting choice." He handed me his card. "If you ever decide to make a change, give me a call. We're always looking for talent like yours." The card felt like a key in my pocket. A week later, the carefully constructed dam broke. My father burst into my office, his face ashen. "Harrington just called. They're reconsidering all future projects with us." I didn't look up from my superintendent reports. "Why?" "Paula met with Thomas yesterday and promised a completion date 4 months earlier than possible for their new development." That's not feasible without a 40% budget increase. I know that, he snapped. But she thought she could win points with an aggressive timeline. Now Thomas says either we honor her promise or they walk. 15 million in contracts, Mark. I leaned back, letting the weight of his panic settle in the room. What do you want me to do about it? Fix it. Call Thomas. Work out a compromise. He respects you. That sounds like a CEO problem. Or an heir problem. Let Paula handle it. She's the heir, right? The color rushed back to his face. Is that what this is? You're willing to let our biggest client walk because your feelings are hurt. My feelings aren't hurt, Dad. I've simply adjusted my investment to match the company's investment in me. What do you want? A title? Koso with Paula. 50-50 ownership. The offer, which 6 weeks ago would have been everything I wanted, now felt like a cheap bribe, a panicked concession. No, I said quietly. I don't want a consolation prize. It's too late. The hollow emptiness I'd felt before was now filled with a grim, solid certainty. The crisis meeting at my parents' house, with its best china and strained small talk, only confirmed it. Their equal partnership offer was born of desperation, not respect. They saw the fire, and they were offering me a bucket of water, not the deed to the building. I'm done working for Matthews Construction, I told them, my voice steady as I placed my resignation letter on the table. I've accepted a position as Chief Operations Officer with Harrington Development. The silence was absolute, broken only by my mother's sharp intake of breath. You're abandoning us? Your own family? Paula whispered, her face crumbling. No. The family abandoned me when you decided I was only good enough to work behind the scenes. I stood. I'm simply recognizing that reality. My father's voice was thick with a mix of hurt and fury. If you walk out now, don't expect to be welcomed back. You're choosing to become our competitor. I'm not your enemy, Dad. I'm just not your safety net anymore. The 6 months that followed were a revelation. At Harrington Development, I was unleashed. Freed from the family dynamics and the constant need to prove myself to those who refused to see, I implemented the innovations I'd only dreamed of at Matthews. Profits soared. I was given autonomy, respect, and a clear path to ownership. I built a life outside the office, friends, hobbies, the model of the Harrington Tower I'd never had time to finish. I was free. Truly, unequivocally free. Which is why, when the call came from Nancy about my father's stress-induced heart attack, the news didn't bring the vindication I might have once expected. It brought a complicated, heavy sadness. He was stable, but the company was in a death spiral. Paula was drowning, and 43 employees, good people I'd worked with for years, were facing unemployment. I stood in my new office, looking out at the skyline, the Harrington Tower a testament to what I could accomplish. I had nothing left to prove. My worth was no longer a question to be debated around a family table. That was my power now. I picked up the phone and dialed Paula's number. Mark, she answered, her voice small and frayed. It's me. Nancy called. How is he? Stable. The doctors say he can't have this stress. She took a shaky breath. And the company, we're going to lose the Miller contract. Project managers are quitting. Oh, I don't know what to do. 6 months ago, this confession would have been sweet victory. Now, it was just a statement of fact, and a tragic one. I'm coming to the hospital, I said. We should talk about Dad. About the company. About options. You do that? After everything? I thought of my father's signet ring glinting as he signed away my future, of my mother's behind the scenes, of Paula's triumphant smile. Then I thought of the 43 families, of Nancy's loyalty, of the legacy my grandfather had actually built, not of favoritism, but of hard work. I'm not making any promises, I said carefully. But yes, I'll come talk. As I drove to the hospital, I understood the final, most important layer of my freedom. It wasn't just the freedom to walk away. It was the freedom to choose to circle back, not out of obligation or a desperate need for validation, but from a position of strength. It was the power to offer help on my own terms, to perhaps salvage something from the wreckage for the people who mattered, the employees, the legacy of the business itself, and maybe, just maybe, a fractured family. I didn't know what the future held. A consulting role? A buyout? Something else entirely? But as I pulled into the hospital parking lot, I knew one thing for certain: whatever happened next would be my choice. I was no longer the man behind the scenes. I was the author of my own story, and that was the greatest legacy of all.